Welcome back to the Illuminated Path. This is episode 34. What are we talking about today?
We are talking about people pleasing, something
Mm,
I personally have been working on for many years. And I think it's something that a lot of people might struggle with. So,
yeah, I know for me, it hasn't been a huge topic, but I know that like when I have felt that I've done it, it's kind of like, crap. Like, why am I here?
yeah.
I'll preface this episode with we've got quite a bit going on. I am still a little congested. We have people doing construction on our house. We've got some static in the living room with our makeshift podcast studio. So we're making do with what we have, but there certainly might be some noises you hear.
New podcast studio to come.
I know, I'm very excited.
I'm so excited to recreate it and
Yeah.
improve upon it, but make it again. And yeah,
I think like we had an idea of what we wanted and we did a good job like bringing it together, but I think at this point we've done many more episodes. I think we've also studied like what other podcasts do and constantly optimizing that process, and I think we're in a place where the next chapter, I think it's going to be really cool to build the new studio now with a little more expertise.
yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, how's the week?
Good. I got back from Scottsdale. I went for my sister's bachelorette. So we went from a Thursday to a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
The weather was incredible. I mean, first of all, just the warm weather. Like, I've been missing the warm weather in Connecticut. And, we have like a 70-degree day here and there, but it was 90 degrees the whole weekend, but there's no humidity.
Mm,
Like, that's not what we experience here. We always end up with the humidity. So it was just warm. And like, my favorite part, honestly, was like waking up and going outside in the morning and just like starting the day out there.
yeah,
It was wonderful. Um,
Portugal is like that. It's
yeah,
like 80 degrees, 90 degrees, but no humidity.
I love it.
It feels like a perfect like 65, 70 all the time.
Yeah. But it was a fun time. We did a lot, so it was tiring. I didn't realize how much the time difference was going to affect me because it was almost like the first couple days I was not used to it at all, and I woke up at like 4:30 AM
Yeah.
Arizona time, but I didn't get enough sleep. But my body was like, "It's 7:30," like, just totally not used to it, and then, as the days went on, I kind of adjusted a little longer, like, I stayed up a little bit later, so then by the time I got back home, I was like I couldn't fall asleep the first night, and then I wanted to sleep in, so yeah, it's definitely a challenge to, like, have that time change and do it in such a short amount of time. Because when we went to California, we had a longer trip, so it was easier to adjust.
Yeah. True.
Um, we did a lot. I think my very favorite thing was all the cacti everywhere. They were
Mm.
so cool.
Yeah, you kept sending me pictures and I thought they were the coolest thing.
They were amazing. There were so many different ones. They looked different, and I learned that they're federally protected, so, like, you
Oh.
cannot remove them.
Hmm.
So some of them, like, looked like they were almost, like, rotting, but you
Oh
can't touch
wow.
them.
Well,
We did, like, an e-bike and hike tour, and that was my favorite. We went I don't know how many miles, but we went a good, like, 2 hours on these electric bikes, and, we had a tour guide who was great, and then we hiked up Camelback Mountain a little bit. And yeah, I love exploring, the nature piece of it. I wish I had more time to do some of that, but it was a good time. My sister had a good time, and that was, important because it was her bachelorette. So,
yeah.
all around good, and I'm also glad to be home.
Yeah. I'm glad you're home.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that's the furthest longest we've been apart.
Yeah. I mean, and we're introverted homebodies. So it's like, when you're not here or I'm not here, it's just kind of we're both off.
Yeah, but
Um,
how about you?
yeah. I didn't do my fast because I was really not feeling great, which I think is just like the construction, like all the dust that's been in our house, I think is getting to me. But I think the big announcement is I got new business cards. We just ordered them yesterday.
Yay.
And I'm excited for that because it's going to be the first time where I have something truly like showing my music, and um having my title as a musician, and I don't have business cards that are trying to fit everything in there of like our podcast, and I help with holistic life, and we do marketing consulting, and hey, we have a clothing line. It's just kind of like this is really what I love and I'm passionate about. Mavs is just
We have our dogs with us. You can only see one of them, I think, but
he's all twisted up. This
they're
is how he
hanging.
chills.
They're hanging.
All right. So talk to us about people pleasing and what it is.
Really quick
Yeah.
before, I want to share my workshop, my free
Yes.
workshop. I talked about it a couple times so far on the last couple of episodes. I've been talking about it on my social media. I'm postponing it. It was originally going to be this upcoming Monday, April 22nd, but with the amount of time just getting back into routine since being here and stuff, like I felt like it was a little rushed.
Mm,
So I'm going to be doing it on May 8th. It is still free. It is a Wednesday night, May 8th at 6:30 p.m. Eastern if you can make it. Even if you can't make it, definitely sign up and I'll be sending the replay for a limited time after.
love it. Good
Yeah.
for you. And I'm proud that you were um willing to do that and do what was best for you
Yeah.
rather than rush it and force it.
Yeah, definitely.
So, what is people pleasing and why does it really matter? I think we have a lot here in terms of like um kind of like the effect it takes, the toll it takes on the person.
Yeah, so people pleasing is really just the tendency and like when you're taking actions based on what other people want, what other people want you to do, expect you to do, or even like getting into your own mind and thoughts and thinking, sorry, our dog is just being funny.
He's struggling to get comfortable.
Um, it's like when you get into your own mind and you think like, "Oh, I should,"
Yep.
which we've talked about should statements.
Yep.
I should do this because of like what other people want.
Mhm.
So it's really looking outside of yourself and doing things based on the desires and hopes and expectations of other people and disregarding your own feelings.
So it's kind of when you're in you're prioritizing other people over yourself, and I think that absolutely affects you in a number of ways. Um I think let's start with your subconscious, right? There's patterns, there's thoughts there. Can you speak to that and how that might affect people?
So subconsciously, there's definitely a lot of things that could be at play. And really, what that means is like you learned at a young age to potentially be taking actions that you're pleasing others.
Mm,
So maybe you learned at a young age that when I do something that is considered good, I'm praised for that.
mhm.
And you desire that praise. You desire being told, like, I'm proud of you, or being asked to do something that you don't want to do, but being told, like, you should do this because it's going to make X, Y, and Z happy. It's what so and so wants. And that is, it's unfortunate when you start to learn that at a young age because you start to, again, disregard your own feelings and you feel like you're doing things because you have to, because other people's emotions and desires matter more than your own.
Right. And I think a lot of this conversation um ends up with especially like kids when we're in school wanting to get good grades for our parents.
Yeah.
You get good grades, your parents will be pleased,
Right.
right? But you don't really care about the grades.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you're doing this one thing for someone else.
Right. You're putting other people's feelings first, but you're like rewarded for that.
Mhm.
So you think, "Oh, getting the reward is good, so I should continue to do these things for other people versus for myself."
Yeah.
Um and it sometimes it can really be about doing things cuz you're trying to fit in.
Mhm.
That's another one that like you can learn at such a young age. That's one that definitely resonates with me. I definitely tried to like fit in when I was, I would say more like middle school age. I found it really hard to kind of make like really good friends and I was just trying to like fit in and who was popular or whatever. And so I would people please. I would do things that maybe weren't what I really wanted to do, or I would make these plans to like go do this or that even though I didn't really want to.
Mm.
So it's kind of like you're just disregarding like your true self and your true desires for what other people are going to see, and making them happy, making them feel a certain way about you instead.
Right, which I think is a good transition into what is the effect that this has on us, right? In terms of our long term, but also a lot of what's at play has to do with our relationship with ourselves.
Yeah, I think that biggest thing is it can create just like a lot of stress and distrust in
Mm,
yourself. When you are constantly taking action against what like you really deeply, like deep down desire, and what really feels right and true to you, if you're taking action against that, that's going to have a ripple effect into other things in your life that like, can I trust myself? Do I, really know myself?
mm.
You kind of feel like you're starting to get lost because maybe your life is filled with these actions that don't even feel in alignment with you.
Yeah, I mean, you don't truly know yourself. I mean, I think about making promises to myself and having trust and respect for myself and holding myself accountable to that. Whereas if you're constantly in situations that don't feel good that you didn't want to be in, that absolutely affects your relationship with yourself. The trust that you have in yourself, holding your word, and respect for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it affects the self love that you feel for yourself, and feeling like just worthy of all things in life,
Yeah.
because you're not staying true to yourself. Again, like you're more worried about what other people think of you, how other people are going to feel, and you're not worried about your own feelings.
Mm. And
Like
there's a fear component to it as well of like I don't want to make someone feel a certain way or let them down.
yeah, it's very much like can be you have a fear of not being in control, so you would
Mm.
rather have some sort of control over the emotion of someone else, and
Right.
like know that you're putting them in a positive place, and even if that puts you in a negative place,
Yeah. It
because you're just afraid of like what would happen if I didn't do that, cuz then it's completely outside of you and you could have maybe a poor reaction from someone.
right. Right.
You'd rather manage your own poor reaction and not be in a great space and feel like crap
Mhm.
than have someone else be disappointed in you, cuz that doesn't feel good.
Right. So let's talk then about examples. I think we've kind of defined it, right? What are examples and then what are ways that well after that we'll get into like how we can actually overcome.
I have many examples that I can share in my life where
Yeah.
I have people pleased, and just times where, like you said, keeping promises to yourself, where
Yeah.
I've like told myself, like, I'm going to go to the gym and do this and that for my health. And then in previous years, like, was asked to go to happy hour after work or something. And I was like, this isn't really what I want to do, but, they're kind of like egging me on, like, come on, come out, be fun.
Mhm.
So I just made the decision, okay, I guess I'm going out. And it's like I disrespected myself in that process because I didn't want to be seen as the boring one who wouldn't go. And so I've definitely had that type of experience. I had a very recent experience in Scottsdale where I'm very proud of myself for
Yeah.
handling it in the way that I did versus how I probably previously would have handled it. So the first night that we went out, it was late and I was really tired. I had been up since 3 a.m. to get to the airport, and it was 10 p.m. in Scottsdale, which is 1 a.m. in Connecticut. So I was up for a full 22 hours at that point.
Yeah.
I was beyond exhausted. Like,
Right.
we go to bed before 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
And so being up till 1 a.m. our time and being running on no sleep was exhausting. So I don't drink, and everyone else was drinking, and that's fine. That's their decision. And I knew that that was going to be the case. But I decided, like, it got to a point where I was like, I need to leave.
Yeah.
I'm so freaking tired. I like was starting to get really, really anxious just being out, and lack of sleep, and like my social anxiety was like just going on because I knew I wanted time and space to myself.
Yeah.
So I told the other girls, I told my sister, I was like, "I have to go.
Mhm.
I'm so sorry. I really need to go back to the Airbnb. I'm beyond exhausted. I don't feel good. Like, my head is hurting. You guys stay out. I don't wanna ruin anyone else's time. I don't want anyone else to leave because of me, but I need to go." And
Yeah.
everyone was like, "Are you sure? Like, are you okay?" I was like, "I'm fine, but, like, I gotta go."
Yeah.
And so I called you. I was upset in the moment because it was just a lot.
Yeah. I mean,
Um
it absolutely is a lot. I mean, a lot of people are drinking and there's not really anything for you to do there. You're at a bar where people go for this one purpose on a bachelorette,
Yeah.
you know? So I I I really admire how you handled that situation. I'm very proud of you because I know that that wasn't easy, and I don't know that I would have had the grace that you had if I was in the same situation.
Yeah. I knew I had to go, and I so people-pleasing old version of me would have just sucked it up,
Yeah.
stayed out as late as everybody else, felt terrible,
Mm,
absolutely terrible, completely drained, and, like, just stayed. And I did stay a little longer than, like, I had really wanted to, but I was trying to see if, like, we were gonna be leaving soon, but it reached a point where I was like, "Nope, I gotta go, and I need
yeah.
to do this for myself," and so I did not choose to people please.
Yeah.
I made the decision for myself. I left. Nobody was mad. I didn't upset anybody, so, like, all of those fears of, "Oh my god, what is everybody gonna think of me?" definitely came up, but that was all in my own head. Everybody was
Yeah.
fine with it, and that's what happens a lot of times when we people please is we assume
Mm.
someone's gonna think this about me, so we make this decision that doesn't feel good or aligned.
And I think there's something to be said for that as well of almost doing it, making the decision for yourself and owning that and understanding that something that comes with that is also the realization that a lot of the assumptions you made are honestly a lot of times not true.
Right,
You know, people aren't going to be pissed all the time. They're not always going to be upset or disappointed. You know, I think at the end of the day, I think that's something we talk about next is empathy versus, um, making a decision for yourself. Like you can have an understanding of how someone else might feel, but when you get into trouble is when you prioritize that over what you actually want and need.
right. Yeah. So that's my example, and I was proud of myself for how I handled it. I did not people please, but if I were like, an old past version of me, I
Yeah.
definitely would have made the decision to stay in a place where I was uncomfortable, didn't feel good, and solely for other people, not for myself.
Yeah. I don't really have examples. I think most of my examples are finding myself in events that I didn't want to go to, like just being with people I didn't really care to be around. And I think as I got older, I don't have friend groups. Like I really just kind of got away from that and focus my time on how I want to spend it. So talk to us about boundaries because I think this is one of the biggest components of overcoming and dealing with people pleasing tendencies.
Yeah, you have to really know what your own boundaries are based on your needs, your feelings, and like what you truly want.
Right.
So, in the example of like you're saying, like going to events, well, you have to set your boundary. Either you're going to go and you're okay with that decision, but your boundary is like, I'm only staying for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Or like me, my boundary was met when it had reached 10 o'clock there and I was exhausted and I was like, I gotta go.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't take a lot of time beforehand to decide what that boundary was, but in the moment, I knew I had reached it.
Right. And I think there's something to be said for that too. You don't need this um long, complex, overly complicated boundary. It really could just be the gut feeling you have in the moment.
Right. And the more you listen to yourself and take action based on how you feel and doing what's right for you, the easier it will be to like intuitively feel like, okay, this is like my boundary and I need to make a decision for me.
Yeah.
And also with that, sometimes it is actually setting a boundary verbally with other people
Right.
and telling them, like, "Hey, I am gonna come to your party, but I'm not gonna be there for long." Or, "Hey, I just really can't make it today. I'm so sorry." And that's your boundary, and unfortunately, some people will accept that and be cool with it, and if people are not cool with it, then they're overstepping and they don't respect your boundaries. So
Yeah.
it's important to know that too.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that in, I think it was episode 3,
I don't know. We had a whole episode on boundaries.
energy vampires and setting boundaries. A
Yeah,
lot of the times, the people who get upset about you setting boundaries are the people who benefit from your lack of boundaries.
right.
So, boundaries are a huge one. I think awareness plays a role for sure. In order for you to, we always talk about awareness, but in order for you to recognize that you're people pleasing, you need an awareness of the fact that it's something that you do. And you need to carry that awareness into the present moment and be able to see, am I going to make a decision that is for other people over me?
Right. There
So
yeah.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say there's definitely been times where you and I have even done it together, where we've made decisions that were, like, for other people.
Yeah.
Um, and that's okay, but now we, like, recognize it and know that and are aware that we're not going to make that same mistake in the future because it doesn't feel good after.
Yeah.
It puts us into a not so great headspace knowing that maybe we let someone overstep a boundary or we made a decision because of considering other people's feelings.
Yeah. I also think about, oh, I just lost my train of thought. It's okay. Empathy and understanding, right? So I think a lot of people pleasers are empathetic.
I'm very empathetic.
Yeah. And what I find is that you reach a point of you understand someone's energy and feeling so well that you don't want them to feel bad.
Yeah.
And so you end up making a decision almost to prevent them from feeling bad.
Yeah.
But in the process, you kind of throw yourself under the bus.
Yeah.
So the other thing I was going to say, actually, I'm just remembering now was when you do everyone a favor, no one knows it's a favor, you know?
That's a good one.
So like we found that in business. Like when we really started and we had all these small business clients, we were, trying to cut everyone a deal. And then they were still wanting to nickel and dime things. And we're like, look, this is what we can do. We've already given as much as we can. And I think that ended with us taking a lot of projects where we were losing money or we were doing it for free and losing time.
Yeah.
So I think the same also applies for people pleasing. If you're constantly doing everyone this favor, this service of, I don't want you to feel bad, nobody knows you're looking out for them. And you're harming your relationship with yourself in the process.
I think being an empathetic person, like, I am very aware of other people's feelings. I'm always constantly aware of your feelings,
Yeah.
and it's gotten me into trouble before for sure. For that exact reason. Like, I don't want to bring anybody down, but in the process I can bring my own self down.
Yeah.
But we need to all realize, like, we need to put ourselves first
Yep.
because that's what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
The majority of people are not super empathetic. So if you are someone who's very empathetic like myself, you may have a harder time with that, but you need to remember, like, you may be trying to over consider everybody else, but guess what? Everybody else is just considering themselves. So it is perfectly okay for you to consider yourself first and foremost. And
Yeah.
that's not to say don't consider others, but it's like you come first, then everyone else.
Yeah. I mean, that goes back to not pouring from an empty cup and, really showing up for yourself first. We talked about that in the relationship episode. Like everybody puts their partner first or their kids first, and that's great, as long as it's not harming you. But in the long run, you need to take care of yourself in order to show up as your best self for those people.
Yeah.
So talk to us about relinquishing control, because I think that's kind of the hidden component to this.
Yeah, I think we were just mentioning a little bit earlier too is like start to want to control the situation. You're scared of how someone might react, so you are going to take action because you think you're like in control of their feelings in that way versus putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation where you may feel like some sort of negative feeling from them or some sort of like disapproval from them.
It's almost like avoiding conflict.
It is definitely oh my goodness,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
I don't know how you didn't say that before.
No,
I
that
am
yeah.
very big on avoiding conflict. I don't like conflict. I don't like conflict with you. I don't like
Yeah.
conflict with anybody, with friends, family, and the majority of my life and time, I'm not having conflicts,
Right.
but I don't like it.
Yeah, I think, people who are people pleasing, they're trying to avoid this hypothetical conflict of the assumption that they've made in their mind.
Right.
So I think there's that control component because they think that if they can make a decision for this person and quote unquote do them a favor, they can avoid a potential confrontation.
Yeah, absolutely. Which guess what? Sometimes it can be as simple as like conflict doesn't have to be big and bad and scary. And I think
Yeah.
that sometimes like when you do people please, you really put it in your mind as it is big, bad, and scary.
Mm,
And conflict can just be a conversation sometimes with someone. It can be compromise.
yeah.
So it doesn't have to be big, bad, and scary. You don't
Hmm.
have to people please in order to avoid it.
Yeah. And I will say too, conflict can be good and help you, reach that compromise or figure out your differences and how you can move forward together.
Yeah. And I think that really brings us to our last point, which is just communicating and setting expectations. If you are asked to do something, like we said, and you don't want to, or you have a boundary of how much you can do of that, be communicative about it. Don't make it a surprise where you like show up to the thing and then peace out and then someone's mad at you about it.
Mm,
Tell them up front because then it's better if everybody knows what
yeah.
to expect.
I think that's a big thing too, is like, because a lot of people, and I maybe you can agree or disagree on this, but I think part of the process of like stopping yourself from people pleasing is that halfway point where you agree to do something and then you show up and start setting boundaries. And where you want to get is setting the boundaries before you agree to do the thing.
Yeah.
So I think there's that like tension period where you've agreed to do something sort of people pleasing, but then in the moment, it gets so uncomfortable that you have to start setting boundaries.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of part of that like growth journey there.
Yeah. I know we talked a lot about in people pleasing and setting boundaries and all of that in terms of like being invited to go places and whatnot, but it's a big thing in work.
Yep.
I used to take on projects when I didn't feel like I truly had the time
Yep.
because I felt like I had to get the approval of my boss or whoever. So you have to know again like what your boundaries are, what you are capable of. You can't be pouring from an empty cup and just doing for everyone else and you're drowning.
Yeah. I mean, especially from the business end of it, we've heard so many entrepreneurs who they people please until they burn out.
Yeah.
And then they have this like disconnect moment where they're completely fried for a couple days and they need to recuperate.
Yeah.
So it takes a toll on you. And if you don't prioritize yourself, you very well could end up in that rut of needing time to recharge because you've just gone, and you've never really prioritized yourself. You're really just kind of appeasing everyone else.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I think that is it. Go to newmoonholisticlife.com/true self if you would like to join my free workshop on May 8th.
I love that. So just a reminder then, quick reminder, what is that?
So this workshop is really going to be focusing on getting to know and understand your true self. A lot of people get so stuck in like following some sort of path that they feel like they have to be on, that society told them to be on. I mean, this is what my past absolutely looked like. And it wasn't like my life changed when I took the time to get to know myself again and set real, true goals. And I'm going to be teaching about that. Like, we are going to go through a rediscovery process.
Mm.
I'm going to walk people through like a meditation so they can really actually feel into that, not just like put it down on pen and paper.
Yeah.
Um, we're going to be setting identity based goals together. So instead of just setting like a milestone, we're going to really get to know who we want to become and what that identity looks like, and um, creating some action steps to really start to take action towards that. So it's going to be a workshop, interactive,
Yeah.
really exciting. And then I haven't shared this, but I might as well share it now. At the end, I'm going to offer like a free 30-minute integration call with me, so I can do one on one with people if they would like to have a little bit of extra guidance after going through this process and this workshop. And as far as, again, how they can take their steps towards these new goals. And I'm also going to teach about like creating a holistic lifestyle and how that's such an important component to reaching your goals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that was kind of a lot, but
No, I love
in a
that.
nutshell, that's kind of the whole idea.
Yeah, I love that. I love that it's more of like an interactive life coaching call, and you're really kind of going through what that looks like and crafting it.
Yeah,
And the last one was great, but it was like very honed in on one topic, and I think
right.
this gives a really nice kind of broad understanding of like what this all would look like to implement.
Yeah,
That's great.
I'm excited.
You can go to our website, theilluminatedpathpodcast.com. On there, you can suggest topics, you can write in, you can ask questions. So feel free to write in or write us a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.